Hey everyone, hope you liked the last video. Don't know yet, just made it, haven't put it out yet. I've created the illusion of the passage of time by changing locations. So I had another thought about furry stuff recently that I found very interesting, because another thing that's very mundane to the point where everyone just kind of intuitively gets it and no one questions it and no one really tries to explain it, which is Maws versus Paws, which is like, it's a very interesting question because like people ask, do you like Maws or Paws? And the question here is these, or actually usually mean feet, honestly, but these very not human things on my hands and feet are the crazy fucking long canine freaking snout thing I have here, which, I mean, why would anyone pay attention to that? That'd be crazy. Those are distinctly inhuman traits. Sometimes people even extend the question. And what's telling about the extended question is people will add tails and wings or something like that. It'll be other features that humans don't have. And it's always a list of things that humans don't have. It speaks very specifically to why that question's being asked and why furries fixate on it, which is that we have an obsession and a fixation on the textural experience of what it would be like to be a werewolf or some kind of fantasy creature, or even just, you know, an anthro animal, which is always some kind of fantasy thing because they don't exist in real life. We care about fur. When somebody gets a fursuit, first of all, they want physical contact. Fursuiters are touching each other. People hug fursuits. People want to hug fursuits, and there's an entire system around like badges at conventions, giving permission for like how much, like whether or not you want people to hug you and so on. There's a whole etiquette based around that because there's a shared understanding that people want to touch the fursuits. When you get a fursuit, you often, the trope is that you lay down in a bed and you stroke the sheets next to you, like, come on, give it a pat, and someone's going to join you in bed is the idea. And that's not always inherently just about like, it looks really ridiculous. But it's also just the fact that like people want to cuddle fursuits. They want to experience being in the company of fursuits. You change your silhouette and your height and your overall like shape and your apparent like visual weight, and you gain fur and these other details and traits and ears that do not resemble the humans as we experience them. And I think that's what non-furry media always fails to understand about furries, is that they're just like, they'll treat it like we're elves. Like you're just somebody who likes just like, that's, how do I put it? Like they're forum avatars. Like people can understand the idea that on a forum, you might have a picture of like an anime character that represents you. And they might understand that in video games, you customize a video game character. And especially some of the straight furries I know, their personas are kind of just their video game character, but another chance to customize somebody. Like this is my VR chat version of my WoW character, basically. And they're not like attached to the character necessarily in quite the same way. They just like made a character to fit in because that's what you do in this social setting. But like a lot of furries very specifically are invested in the fantasy of the creature. And so we have this built-in handshake that gives us this like in-group, out-group signifier that's based in that shared intuitive understanding that we care about being a thing with Paws and Maw and freaking fur and everything. And imagine a reality where that's what we experience, and we seek versions of that experience. Like you go to a convention and you can physically buy a tail that's weighted in a way, and it's a big complicated contraption. I saw Toaster going around this like a metal plate on his butt so that he could have a tail that would like basically wag in a more realistic way, because it has this whole skeletal inside rubbery thing going on, and it's not just a flaccid fabric tail hanging off his belt. It's specifically like a thing that's like constructed with a bunch of expensive and heavy stuff that's uncomfortable to use to get the benefit of having it move in a way more like you expect it to. People go through a bunch of work to create like cybernetic ears that will emote with their fursona. facial expressions and all these other things. And not to leave it unspoken, knots. That's part of the weird fantasies. Oftentimes, like, there's a fixation on, in the furry porn, genitalia that we do not experience in any real way. Specifically, this is a really interesting thing that kind of puts me on this entire path here, is that when I was talking to somebody that I met on Bark, we kind of just like bonded over knots, specifically the etiquette and the like aftercare and the sort of like shared mandatory sentence to intimacy that happens in this fantasy concept where a werewolf is intimately stuck to their partner, and they're just like, that's where they live now for like the next, depending on the fantasy or the fiction, 10 minutes, hour. There's like, people oftentimes elongate the time window more and more based on the idea of how it would be an interesting social fantasy and intimate fantasy to actually be tied to another thinking, breathing person, someone that you are in love with, or maybe someone that you just hooked up with and don't have that much of a thing to, because there's a whole other aspect of like thinking about what it'd be like to be stuck to somebody that was like a good lay, but they're annoying, and now you're stuck with them for like the next hour because you just like, that's sort of like post-nut clarity of being stuck with somebody. Like, it goes from the sexual fiction to the role play fiction of people wearing fursuits and just socializing and interacting as these avatars and so on. It's like a very specific interest. Like, I recently met somebody who very specifically is a big, tall guy, and in VR chat, he likes to be a little guy. And you get a different experience because you get to be small instead of large, and you're exploring that specifically, but you specifically get to look up at much larger cartoon animals that have all these features and so on, and that all these things synergize with each other, and it's all summarized as this like intuitive thing of just going, hey, Maws versus Paws. Like, I saw this specifically when I was watching Bardic RJ ask these questions, because they do this at a number of conventions here and there, and it's like, everyone just gets it. And of course they just get it, because we all have this intuitive understanding that this is like part of what drew us into this space, and why we're fascinated with drawing these characters or commissioning art of these characters, or we have a fursona with all these specific designs. Like, it's because you specifically enjoy, even if you don't do role play or ERP or some variation of similar thing where you actually play a character in some state of play, you are enjoying imagining this different way of being, this different state of existence. The idea of like, what if you were a giant centaur creature that had like the 4 legs and the 2 arms and giant, like vaguely horse-shaped back end extended thing? You'd be like, I guess I'm in my post-clothes era, or as I became this character. Do I pay taxes? Do I have a job? I don't know, but I'm enjoying the fantasy of just being this entirely different type of character than any sort of human experience allows. I just found that very interesting. There's like a shibboleth aspect to Maws versus Paws that is under-interrogated, because the sort of like psychology of furry stuff is almost never fully interrogated, because you have two sides, basically. You have the non-furries, who are incapable of taking any of this seriously because it looks really stupid to them, which, fair, we agree. But then you have the people on the inside, which we don't want to break down almost any of this or get to frank discussions of any of it to some level, because we're too busy doing PR for outsiders, where we act like it's just a funny little hobby for people that like crafts, and that's all that there is to it. And that's how you get stuff like the Sigma Paws video, where the guy's just like, everyone's sure is neurodivergent in this fandom, and he got away with like not even acknowledging that people are gay in the fandom and that people are queer and trans, when that's way more prevalent than neurodivergence in the fandom. That neurodivergence is not the summarizing aspect of the fandom, although this entire topic could be very comorbid with that entire concept for sure. It's all related to things, but I'm like, it was very strange to me. I'm like, because we don't want to be perceived by outsiders in any deeper level because they're always on the attack, essentially, we kind of cut off any sort of deeper conversation about what the furry fandom actually is. And then, of course, the outsiders just then, of course, have no deeper understanding. But the downside of that, because I don't care about the outsiders, but the downside of that is that we don't have these conversations about, like, what is this? What are we all doing and why? And so on. And I find this interesting, and maybe we'll get around to doing the proper research to break this down on some level. But, like, I keep wondering, is furry a social movement? Is there something here that's more important and more significant than people are, like, really kind of, like, willing to think about on some level? And I think that there's something going on there, because it's tens of thousands of people, and it's a queer subculture, which is inherently already a hotbed for being important culturally. Like, there's something going on there. And so I think that there's an avenue of research that could be done breaking down how all of this compares to, say, punk subculture, goth subculture, and so on, each of which are different sort of social movements that did have a point and do have a point and mean something, even if the public understanding of these groups is usually just their aesthetic. So much like that, furries get reduced to their aesthetic, and because furries are kind of inherently silly as a concept, there's a sort of refusal to engage with the concept intellectually and wonder what the fuck is going on here. And I think there's a lot to mine there. And it's just like, this is the tip of the iceberg, and I've been thinking about this for a while, and that's probably why I thought I fixed it on this specifically, because I've thought about it for ages now, and there's just kind of have a million things to work on. But I'm like, yeah, even Maws versus Paws, it has a cultural signifier to it, and we just share it around because it's comfy, and that's fine. I'm not. There's none of this is criticism, but it's so interesting to actually think about what's happening socially in that moment and how that compares to other lived experiences that people take way more seriously usually. Anyway, that's my nonsense ramble about being a dumb cartoon hyena. I'll see you next time.